Hello, hello. Welcome to CoMA Pirate Radio, where we as esoteric pirates slide our boats together, throw some ropes, tie those knots, and talk about some maps. Maybe, just maybe, we can find the jeweled island. I'm here at Center of Mystic Arts now, and I am talking to my tattoo apprentice, Chelle. She came in a very interesting time, and we have a very interesting story to tell. Now, I have to set up the story because I was tumbling down a series of unfortunate events, starting with a really sad breakup, a trip to the United States, being on tour alone, having a house sitter that ended up not being really the best house sitter. After about 2 weeks of being on tour in the United States, I started getting reports from my neighbors about the house sitter not taking care of the house. And the dogs, basically the dogs. The dogs were in really bad shape, and whenever I tried to communicate with the house sitter, there was a very solid wall that communication was not getting through. So what happened was CoMA was left abandoned, empty. Everything was locked up in one room for the longest that she's ever been before. It was close to 2 months. Azul, my dog, said fuck this and left. Bingo almost died. And Luna's just a wild Luna bean. She's still as fat and happy as ever. So what had happened at that point was I was trying to get somebody in to take care of the dogs, obviously. And I had a group of people that I was talking to, and one was Chelle. She came in at the same time as another friend of mine and was able to, I want to say pass the test, but she was able to make it through. So I'm going to pass the mic to her and let her tell her story from when she arrived, what she found here. And personally, I really would like you to dive into the mental powers that it took for you to actually stick it through the whole month before I came back. Here's Chelle. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Mystic Eve, and all of the patrons and viewers listening to the podcast. Really appreciate you all, and thank you so much for just taking the time out to hear my story here at CoMA from my first arrival up into just today, and how just transformative it's been for me, being able to come to CoMA in the condition that it was in. I arrived here back in July. I felt very called to CoMA at the time, where I had just came into Costa Rica, and I was really figuring out what I wanted to do and ways that I could make money doing, just traveling as an artist. And I one day was just at the beach, and I was in meditation, and the thought of tattoos just randomly popped in my mind. And I tell one of my friends that I met while traveling, that I felt very this interest of wanting to do tattoos, and she let me know that there was a workaway, that was actually offering a tattoo apprenticeship, and it seemed very in alignment. So I just kind of reached out to Mystic Eve. I went ahead and searched her on Workaway. I was able to locate her, reach out to her, let her know my plans and what I was up to. And yeah, we set up pretty much a date of when I would be here. Here with again her business partner at the time. So I was very hyped and ready, even with knowing the condition of coma. But even with just that, some things you don't really get the full feel of something until you actually experience it. So, even with being told that, coma hadn't really been taken care of in a minute, and, due to, past volunteers and house sitters and things like that, I was still up for the challenge because I was very determined I had already made this decision that I wanted to do this. So I really wanted to just stick it through. And I think that was like the first mental transformation that I had, where it's just like being very dedicated to something I'd never done before, going into the unseen, the dark realm, and just like trusting the process, where it's just like, I don't know the outcome of this. I don't know what it's going to be like. She's not even in Costa Rica, so it's like I'm really going in here blindfolded, and I'm going to be staying with her business partner, so my first day of arrival, I was very I was very taken aback, like I said, a lot of the times you don't know what you're going to get into until you actually experience it in the physical. So even though Eve told me everything about a coma, I still couldn't put a picture to it until I got here. And when I got here, I was very spooked out. It definitely looked like someone had not been here in over, it looks like it just been vacant, for a minute. It looked like a vacant home. I said, I don't know how anyone can live here. And even with this information, I didn't know Eve still. So, I don't know the way that Eve lives technically. I don't know, her living condition, if she's actually a clean person. I don't, because it's the jungle and it's the wild. So some people, they live that lifestyle through and through. And, some people aren't as clean, because staying in the jungle, it requires a discipline of, a cleaning discipline. It does require you to maintain the cleanliness because you're basically living outside. So for me, that was very new. But yeah, when I get here, I was just really uncomfortable. I was scared to to put my stuff down anywhere. It was really dusty, very just disorganized because the neighbors had locked all of the things up in the temple room. So it's just everything was just cluttered and just in one room, and I was just so nervous about touching anything because the moment I got in here, I flipped over one of the curtains and a bunch of bats flew out, and so I was so spooked out because I just did not know. I'm like, oh, it's just critters and crawlers everywhere throughout here, and I had already been in Costa Rica for about 3 months, but I was staying at a hostel. So in a hostel, you have cleaners and people that take care of the place on a consistent basis, so it wasn't really something that I considered heavily, but it definitely helped me, being uncomfortable in those situations really helped me surrender to just the expectation that things are going to be the way that I want them to be. So having to let go of that, that attachment that, things are the way that we want them to be. And sometimes they're not, they're just what they have to be in order for us to really to test us, and I feel like coma really tested me because as I got here, I did wait for the, her business partner at the time, and he finally came, and we clicked. It was a really nice connection. Him never being in Costa Rica before, and I had just got here, and I'm starting just this new chapter in my life, and he did really help set the place up. So taking the things out, kind of organizing it, making it look homely, as much as homely as we could make it.
If you were here alone, if it wasn't for him, do you think you would have been able to stay? You think you would have stayed?
Oh, I definitely, yes. I think I I was willing to come regardless. So even when I, before I knew that there was a business partner coming, I was still already on board about coming to CoMA. I'm a person I don't really like, because I am macro traveling. I'm in a whole nother country. I also don't want to do micro travelings. I really didn't want to be hopping around and going to different places and stuff like that. And before I got here, I definitely did a reading, a spread, and I felt like it gave me a lot of encouragement to really just trust the process. And the reading that I did have before I got here was also about being in the state of receiving, and, a lot of times we feel like we have to just give, and then we get depleted, and then sometimes that can have an effect on us because then we think that we're just giving and we're not receiving anything. But it really kind of gave me this, like, confidence where it's just, like, not necessarily receiving from other people per se, but knowing that the universe is going, like, being open to that the universe is going to take care of my needs and take care of everything on the, behind the scenes. So it was a time for me to really practice faith, I would say. That's one thing I really had to learn while being in CoMA. But, like, this idea, like, having to practice our faith, like, just putting faith into practice by saying, I do trust this process. I felt guided here, even though the external circumstance isn't what I imagined. And, and the business partner, after the third day, he was out of here, which that did scare me a little bit because, he was kind of the man in the house, in a sense. He was the man in the house compared to me and him, So it's just like he kind of like was taking care of all of the things that I didn't really want to do. Like, so he did kind of like, put a lot of stuff. He wasn't scared about getting dirty and, those things, which made it very comfortable for me. So when he decided to leave, I was a little nervous about it because I'm like, this is her business partner. Like,
he's out. And
the business partner is out. Like, what does this even mean? Like, if the business partner is out of, the business, especially with it being only the third day. So, it's like, okay, you also don't want to ignore red flags. So it's like, is that a red flag or is that just another test to kind of spook me out and to kind of see am I going to stay? And for me personally, I had kind of already made up my mind that no matter where I go to as far as traveling, that I would at least hold myself to a date, and really, if it's a month, then I would give myself at least a minimum of a month, regardless of what it looked like, because I do think in those times when we stick things through and we really are determined, it just has powers to transform us, going into that darkness or like that the womb space, being birthed, that where like we're being created again, and I felt like that's what was happening at CoMA for me, where it's like this intense birthing happening where it was like very uncomfortable. I felt very disassociated from myself, because I'm in a place that I don't feel as comfortable with, and other people are leaving, and I'm learning to not be so easily influenced by other people's behavior, because in the past I probably would have loved if somebody else left, like, okay, they're leaving, so maybe I need to leave too. Maybe this is a bad signal or, showing bad signs. But I was glad that I stuck it out because I did want to see just the town, and I'm glad that I did.
Month, right?
I stayed for about a month by myself, I would say, and then another volunteer ended up coming, who I really enjoyed having, and it was very nice.
She left too.
It was nice, but yeah, she left too. The other volunteer left, so like that was like another like punch in my stomach where it was just like fuck, like.
Talk about like, because you said it felt haunted. I'd like to know more about that.
Yeah, so I think as far as it feeling haunted, it definitely like just the essence of the place, because one, it hadn't been taken care of, and then kind of learning about like the past energies that had been in the center, it kind of did make a little more sense. Like, okay, like, this is kind of like a thought form that's kind of created because people with certain type of energy has probably manifested this orb around the house, and I don't know these people. I don't know anyone in this situation. I still haven't met the person that owns the house. I've only talked to her through voice messages. So like, I'm just like, I don't know what to feel about any of this. And it, for me, I love to take a mystical approach with everything. So it's like having to see through the veil and like, okay, what is this saying? What does this mean? Is this a sign? What is this symbolically telling me? After the
we sort of talked about him putting energy into CoMA, but there wasn't like any kind of paperwork business partnership going on. But we're still friends. We still talk.
Yeah, I think it's all love. I think at the end of the day, even with, him being the co-partner, at the time, I think a lot of it was less about the condition of CoMA. I do think a lot of it was in like just individual shadow work that needed to be done in general, and I think, it's easy to, when you can have an excuse as to why you're leaving versus being like honest, like, okay, you're really just running from yourself. This is very difficult for you to like really be able to sit in this because you're used to a certain type of lifestyle. You're used to a certain type of living, so it's like being taken out of the comfort zone and having to witness like kind of a decline happening on another person, seeing like the way that they're mentally, like being able to get a glimpse of their thinking and getting a glimpse of like, okay, this isn't just about CoMA, this is also just some like trauma that that you probably need to like work out within yourself, like residue that you haven't cleared out. And I think CoMA kind of had the powers to do that. Like,
it does, yeah. Even clean, she will clean you out.
Definitely. Like, I definitely think Eve talks about like a lot of magician coming here, and a lot of magic just been done in CoMA, and a lot of just like intuitive and empathic people have come here. So this place is like filled with that type of energy and healing energy. So I think it does have a way to like evoke that out of us, whatever those subtle feelings that we're like either trying to like continue shoving down. I definitely think that CoMA has the power to really bring that out of people, and face it. The mirrors, going back into mirrors again, like being able to see your reflection through these type of stuff. And like it definitely had that haunted essence, especially with the bats coming out. Like, it definitely felt like a haunted house. It's definitely felt like a haunted house for me. I just felt very like just this dark shadow, especially when I would come back and it would be like sun would be down, and just like seeing CoMA from afar, like the way like approaching it just felt like this really dramatic, like dun 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 dun, like every time that I would like approach the house.
Yeah. At this point, I was thinking about me coming home, because then it was so different than any other time I have ever come home from being on tour. For one, I had already thought about, like, I felt this place as a magician, and CoMA being a spirit and an egregore that I feel very heavily. And with me going through a breakup, it was like the inner shadow, inner child, abandonment wounds were wide open. And when Sophie and I arrived, I'm glad that it was during the day. But usually the dogs are greeting me, and somebody's here greeting me, and everything's just happy. But like, there was nobody here. There was no dogs here. And I mean, it was like Chelle said, it was cleaner than it was when she arrived, but at the same time, it was way less clean than I've ever seen it, because I do very much keep it clean, which like, I feel like that's part of my magical abilities is with the broom. That's where my witchness comes out. And I feel like I was just a tornado for the first week. It took at least a solid week to really put this whole place together. So tell me what you experienced when Sophie and I got back.
So, like, okay. Once the second volunteer left, she was saying that CoMA, she was having mental issues. She was really expressing like her mental decline happening while being at CoMA, which, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily CoMA or because of Mystic Eve. I definitely think it's just like, that was just the energy and the time and, of this place. And, and it wasn't the cleanest. I think anytime you just go anywhere where it hasn't really been like deep cleaned and stuff like that, it definitely can have an effect on your mental health and stuff like that. And the bed had a big dent in it that she was sleeping on, because we really didn't know what we were doing with those. Like, we were just stacking a bunch of styrofoams on each other, not thinking that it was going to sink. And we just thought, like, this is the conditions that we're in, Like, so it was very difficult for us to see, like, the potential, I would say. Like, we were very blinded by, like, just what was, that we didn't really exercise, like, the potential of what it could be. But yeah, once she kind of figured out that where she was going to go and she ended up leaving, it was just really ironic too that her and Eve left on the same day at the same time. Like, she got on her bus exactly the same time that Eve touched down, and she was really excited about seeing Eve, but it just didn't work out that way. So I was kind of nervous, definitely, about meeting Mystic Eve. One, because one of the dogs were going ill. Like that week before Eve got here, one of the dogs started to have like a health decline. He wouldn't eat, and he was getting very bony, very smelly, very sick. His fur was just shedding, and it was like he just became so, like, he was vibrant, and then he, over time became very just like lame and like limp and just like no life to him. So it was very difficult because I never had to deal with the animal so closely on that, like, to that extreme where I'm like, wow, life and death is kind of at my hands right now, like, let me try to muster up as much praying powers that I can, I never had to pray over a life like that, so it was like, it definitely taught me how to go a little deeper, with the animals and really do my, like, just connect. And even though I didn't know what I was doing, but it was just like, I don't want this dog to pass away while I was here. And I was just really begging for the dog to stay here until Eve got here. So definitely when Eve got here, it was a lot of good and a lot of uncomfortable, for me. I mean, when the house did start to flourish more, I mean, it definitely went from haunted to more like holy, it definitely did start to feel more like, okay, I understand the ceremonial aspects of this place. I understand the ritual place. I understand how this is a sacred space now, like, and Eve really having her practices and like sharing them with me and, really getting a more idea of how she runs CoMA definitely made me feel more better. And it definitely made me have more respect for Eve, because I didn't know her, so I didn't know how she lived, so it's just like, okay, CoMA is in good hands. Like, hippies aren't just coming here living all crazy. Like, this is a place where one could really just like stay and visit and, work and, learn at. But yeah, so for me personally, I would say I'm really on the chill side, like really chill. Like sometimes I can be a little too mellow and a little too chill. So I knew that Eve had a lot of energy, like just from voice messages. Like, I mean, from her voice, like, I think when we first got here, kind of what Eve said, that like when she got here, it was like it didn't feel homely to her. So like the dogs wasn't here, nobody welcomed her, the place was kind of dirty. She just traveled, from the States here, like she's coming back home. So I had never met Sophie, so we didn't really talk about Sophie that much throughout, like while Eve was in the States, and stuff didn't really come up as much. So this was also my first introductory of meeting Sophie, Eve's daughter. And like, I would say like the very first night was like really difficult for me. The first night when they got here, all of us living together, it was just like, oh my God, like. One, because I didn't realize that Sophie had a potty mouth or whatever. So yeah, it's a potty mouth on her, which I've learned to like respect. Like, I'm not gonna say respect, but I've definitely learned to just like laugh at and like kind of just brush off and not like take too personally. The first night, it did make me a bit. I was like, what the, my eyes kind of got big because I really wasn't expecting, like, a little 8-year-old. Like, she looks like she's 6, like she's really tiny and petite. So I'm like, whoa, this child has a mouth on her. Like, crazy. But she hadn't been in out here in a minute either, so it was like coming back home. So I was just like really like kind of frozen within myself. I didn't know what to do. I'm just like I waited here for like a month and a half, and it's just kind of going back to that thing of like expectations, where it's just like detaching from an expectation. Why would I think I would know how Eve and her daughter would be before coming here? I don't know these people. Like, I don't know no one, and having to remind myself that. But I think with Eve, she's very open about like communication and like really holding space for that, and it not being like, I don't know if she took anything I said offensively, but like but even still just being able to have a clear channel to talk, in
any way, shape, or form. Yeah, exactly.
Like any way and be able to verbalize, and even just that was really a lesson for me, because I had to throughout just my time in CoMA, I had to continually do things that I never typically did. So it was like, even it's kind of like just speaking up, or like, let me bring this to attention, or let me speak out and say what is bothering me, versus like in the past I probably would have just continued just brushing every single thing off. And it really taught me more about the powers of like communication and transforming, when we use our words, and that I think everything can be settled with just a talk, and I felt like once I kind of expressed myself about everything, I definitely saw like a transition, and I was able to really be able to coexist without this feeling of like, these aren't like my people, or oh, this is unusual to me, like, and learning how to coexist with that and not taking anything personally. Like, I think going back into like 4 agreements, where it's just like, don't take anything personal, nothing, don't take anything personal. So I had to kind of remind myself that. And I mean, we definitely have had another like a little like communication thing, where I felt myself needing to speak out, whether it was in the right way or not. But it definitely again put me back in this position where it's just like, learn to use your voice, even if it doesn't sound right, even if it does come off a little angry, even if it be authentic with whatever that expression is, that you are feeling. Apologize later, because you can always apologize, but it's just like, feel the emotions all the way through. And and I think like I said, I really appreciate that, Eve openness to having communication here and just being able to work out any kind of issues.
Yeah. It's so funny because I think about Sophie, and then I think, why am I so surprised when she really shows her ass, and I'm like, whoa. But then I'm like, oh my God, she is so me. Yeah. And it does remind me of the 7 years holding this space with a lot of really powerful, opinionated magicians with very different opinions. And yeah, really being able to hold space for any kind of communication. And even feeling that tension of like, ooh, I think we're almost in a fight. Oh my God, are we screaming at each other? But then just allowing it to come forth. And then, yeah, like you said, it's like, it's always better afterwards to just be like, oh, okay, well, now we at least understand each other. And now we can like, how are we going to make this better? How are we going to make these energies like work better together? And yeah, for sure it has blossomed, and for sure we are going to do more podcasts in the future because we have so much more to talk about, because that was a month ago.
Yeah.
We have been living together now for a month. Yeah. And the house is finally put back together. The energies are all cleaned. And Bingo is doing amazing. Come to find out, when I started like investigating what was wrong with him, he had somehow ripped half of his tongue off. And there was a lot of doctoring and care that needed to be done. But he is completely recovered and is doing great. And there's so many more stories and so much more to talk about. But we are, 3-3. We are running out of time. We're never running out of time. But for this podcast, the time has run out. I want to thank you guys so much for listening and so much for supporting. Please check our Patreon account to find out new ways that you can help support. You can watch our videos, unedited videos of what goes on here at CoMA. You can work with me through Messenger and through email. So I'd call it an online magician's apprenticeship program. There's so much out there. So please check out our website, centerofmysticarts.com. All the links are there.
Thank you guys again. Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, Mystic Eve. Follow me on Instagram, enigmas.shadow. Love you guys. Peace.
And whether you're traveling physically or mentally, may it be in love, light, shadow. And don't forget the lube when you need to get through the tight spots. And don't forget the wax when you need to hold on to the ropes. Thank you so much.